Hello and welcome to our show tonight. I've got writer, director, storyboard guy Dave Barton Thomas with me today. Dave, thanks for joining us.
Of course. Thanks for me. Come in and hang out and talk.
I've known you for years, directly and indirectly, and we've worked with probably a lot of similar. It's that 2 degrees of separation, right? You and I probably know a huge chunk of the animation community. But I wonder for anyone that doesn't know you, Dave, if you could give us a little bit of your history, just a little bit of bio of your career and how you got to doing what you're doing.
Sure. Well, about 15 billion years ago, there was the Big Bang. Now, fast forward almost 15 billion years. That's when I showed up. That's the preamble. Yeah, I've had an interesting journey into this field. In that, when I started out, when I was in school, high school, it is, I thought I would be going into astrophysics.
Wow.
I'm fascinated by physics. Um, I was pretty good at it. I was good at it. I won't say pretty good. I was good at it, but I wasn't exemplary. And when I found out that university level physics is very, very difficult,
Right.
I did a complete pivot. I thought it's filmmaking. So I went to college for, again, not animation.
Right.
I wasn't interested in it at the time, and I studied film, video, multi-image, television, and focusing on majoring in film. But when I was there, I became friends with somebody. We're still friends today, and we started playing around doing stop motion,
Right.
which I've always loved. As a kid, Ray Harryhausen's films,
Yeah.
Gumby, Davy and Goliath. I grew up with
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
that stuff.
Yeah. Classic. Yeah.
The Rankin and Bass Christmas
Yeah.
specials. And I found I really liked doing stop motion.
Hmm.
I like the sets. I like the lighting. Again, like live action, you got to sets, your lighting, your camera, the physicality of it. And I've always been fascinated by miniatures. I used to make my own toys when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And and then there's the control. You can control every frame. And I found I really kind of dug it. And I seem to have, some, I won't say I was the gift of stop motion, but I seem to have some skills in it. It's like, oh, I kind of get this. I've got the patience for this. And I still had no desire, plans to pursue the gig in the animation world. Stuck with my live action, goal. And then when I graduated, the industry being what it is, it was one of those kind of lean years in live action. And I pounded the pavement, dropped off my flimsy little CV, and cold called companies. I would literally look up on the. This is before the internet, right?
Right.
So
Right.
I
Right.
would I would literally sit and think, what is a good name for a film company? And I
Yeah.
would go, Monolith, Monolith Productions. That's a good name. I would go to the yellow pages.
Right.
And if I found a Monolith Productions, I would cold call to find out what kind of work they did. And sometimes I lucked out and I would go and drop off a thing. And as that was going, I began to get a little desperate, thinking, okay, I got to get a job. Now, I forgot to say, in second year of college, I did a half stop motion, half live action film, which I ended up selling to HBO Family.
Oh, cool.
Or HBO. It wasn't HBO, it was HBO at the time. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of made back what I spent on it. I thought I was Spielberg. I was very excited. I ran laps in the backyard until I had an asthma attack. Very excited. So on the strength of that, experience, I thought, well, I'll start applying to animation studios.
Hmm.
Why not? Give it a shot. So I began to hit those places, and I got hired as a PA at a studio. So, and it was a traditional 2D commercial animation house. I really had no business being there
Right.
because it was all nothing I'd studied, flipping, painting cells, all that stuff. But I guess, I don't know, I made them laugh or something. I don't know. So they hired me on as a PA, and I learned a lot of stuff. I
Hmm.
shot pencil tests. I painted cells, cleaned cells, learned about what dope sheets were. Had no idea what a dope sheet was. When I did my second year film, I kept all the timings in my head. I
Right.
would go, 4 frames. Okay. And I would animate the thing. So it was a epiphany to me. I said to my boss, "You mean you write down everything in the you write it all down?" And he gave me this look like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
don't you have something to do?" Yeah, yeah. And so
Eh,
I did a little bit of everything there except animate, but I absorbed a lot from the business, from that studio. Then I got a grant to do my own film.
oh, cool.
So I left the studio thinking my film would take me, thinking 4 or 5 months, because the college film hadn't taken a huge amount of time.
Sure.
But the film became almost 17 minutes long,
Wow.
uh, stop motion with some blended stop motion 2D. So it took me about 4.5 years.
I was gonna say, so you're still working on it, right?
Well,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I mean, again, I was in my parents' basement, and I'm
Right.
rolling plasticine
Yeah,
shape,
yeah.
blah blah blah.
Yeah.
But it was all shot on film, 16 millimeter film, and
Wow.
no computer assist. So sometimes it would be weeks before I got the footage back. I had enough
Yeah.
footage to
Yeah.
pay the lab costs, and I would be on the train unspooling my work prints with a loop to make sure it looked focused,
Yeah.
and I was doing all the effects in camera. I had
Right.
a backwind key, so I built a matte box
Yeah.
so I could do a clock wipe, and I had vertical wipes, and I would wind the film back, set up the new set, relight it, uncap the shutter, and then shoot past B. So I'm making sure all my mats were lining up correctly.
Yeah.
So I learned. I kind of just learned by doing, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I'm having flashbacks.
well, and to keep myself quasi sane, I would write to different animation studios
Yeah.
just to get feedback, network,
Sure.
just to connect,
Yeah.
So I wrote to Ardman, and I wrote to Will Vinton Productions and a bunch of other places, and they were kind enough to send me like studio packs, behind the
Yeah.
scenes stuff. And I've got some 3/4 and 1/2 inch demo reels from their studio. I couldn't watch a 3/4, of course. I don't have a deck at home,
Yeah.
but I would put the VHS in and I would study the stuff that, oh, that's how,
Nice.
yeah.
Yeah.
Crib,
Yeah. Yeah.
crib,
Yeah. 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 That's great.
my film. I've got lots of lovely little letters from them, which I keep in my files.
Nice.
And then from there, I again just I was kind of in it. I really enjoyed stop motion,
Yeah.
and when I decided to try to get back into the business again, which again took some time,
Yeah.
once you step out, people forget you even existed,
Yeah.
and that took a lot of patience and a lot of time to do the going down to the city, knocking on doors, the whole thing all over again.
Yeah.
I have I still kept the book. I have an elaborate job search
Nice.
system,
Wow.
kind of like pre-Google. I
Yeah.
would
Yeah.
I would hand draw my own spreadsheets
It's like the
with
art.
company names, contacts. When did I call? Did I get an interview?
Wow.
Yes or no?
Were these in stone tablets at the time? No.
No, but again, just very. I don't know. I like. I'm not naturally a very organized person, but I've
Yeah.
learned how to organize
Sure.
myself and my time. I'm a big fan of lists
Yeah.
and checking, getting the cathartic feeling of, oh, I got it done.
Right. Right.
Um, and then I worked at a place. Uh, I was a junior sculptor and a stop motion animator doing dinosaur animation,
Hmm.
which is some of the hardest animation I've ever done because we were shooting on ones 30 FPS,
Yeah.
and it wasn't personality, it had to look alive.
Right. Right.
So all the nuances, breathing, whatever, the muscle, the weight.
Wow.
So that was a good experience to sort of go from cartoony, fun plasticine stuff
Yeah.
to these really legit, well sculpted, baked latex models.
Yeah.
It was for one of them was for a Discovery Channel doc, and other animation was for the American Museum of Natural History, which was kind
Hmm.
of cool.
Very nice.
I've got a great photo of me there at the M&H, standing next to a video window of this fish I animated. Like, look, I did this. Um, and then the sculpting team, we sculpted a full scale Triceratops that was then turned into a full scale at the Islands of Adventure Jurassic Park theme park in Universal. I guess it's Universal. I think it's Universal Studios. So that was kind of cool too, working on a 24-foot. And I'm a big, you know, dinosaur nut.
Yeah.
So
You
that
never
was
got back to astrophysics? Never? No.
no, no. I mean, but as we both know, physics comes into play in animation all the
Yeah.
time for impact and recoil and
Yeah.
action reaction. So it somewhat comes into play, or knowing, if you've got a light here, how much it falls off as it gets to the
Right.
set. So
Right.
I can still say I still employ some workman-like
Yes.
physics skill.
Absolutely.
My
Absolutely.
my latent astrophysicist inside me. Yes.
Right. So, Dave, here's a question for you. You are a director,
Mm.
and I often wonder, each director I've met usually has a different way of looking at things and producing things, and so I wondered if you had a style or something that, is there a signature of having Dave Barton Thomas on a show? Is there something about the way you bring, if you had to teach your method as an example to a class, what would you tell them? What are some of the frameworks or if there's a template or basics or parameters you put upon yourself when you're looking at, breaking down a script as an example to start? Um, what would be some of the first things you would do when you're looking at a script?
Well, I think it does depend a little bit on what the project is. I've worked in a lot of preschool, for example, and of course, clarity of story is paramount. What's the cleanest way to tell the story? And by that, it doesn't mean sacrificing interest, but not going so far to create a contrived sequence that is a little hard. You don't want to lose the message in what you're trying to say.
Hmm.
So I guess that's one component for me. Um, Another one is sort of, I guess, to go against that, is finding interesting camera angles. Again, camera angles, I find sometimes, camera angles, I find, especially for preschool, should not trump what you're trying to say.
Right.
Don't go for uber fancy, because then that becomes its own thing. And even with live action films, sometimes, as much as I might admire a really fancy cam piece, the danger is that it pulls me out of the story, because I'm like, wow, what a great camera shot.
Right.
And not, this is great for the story. So
Right.
clarity is key. Um, Finding just, and I know some of this is probably quite, directing 101, but for me, again, finding great performance moments that really, really get you into what that character's thinking or feeling. The show I'm on right now, the feeling of the show is like live action. It's not a cartoon. We don't refer to it as a cartoon. It's an animated show, and it's real people in the real world. Uh, and I know some animators might think, oh, but then I can't do all kinds of squash and stretch and stuff.
Right.
And since that's never really been my thing, like I didn't get in animation to do goofy, squashy. I like telling stories.
Right.
And for me, I get just as excited on a scene where the character is not only moving, not only animating, but it's alive.
Right.
There's a spark to it, right?
Hmm.
And I always tell the animation teams there's a difference between moving a character, animating a character, and making them alive.
Right.
And sometimes it's the smallest things where I go, that's it's like the old Frankenstein, it's alive. I've been known
Yes.
to yell that happily at the screen.
I
And
can't
then
imagine.
and then I also, where appropriate, like to find the funny in things.
Right.
And by that, I don't, again, it doesn't always mean relying on squash and stretch and goofy stuff.
Yeah.
It's finding great contextual humor. I worked on one show, it was a co-production, and my role was to review. I was in charge of, I read the boarding team, so I had 5 storyboard artists, and I also led the writing team. So before the writers came in, the production partners had these 2-page outlines for every episode. But their bent was they weren't naturally funny people, which they admitted we're not really funny people. But it's a kid's show. We want there to be adventure and comedy.
Yeah.
And so my gig was to tweak all the the 2-page nuggets, and find extra humor moments in there, which I enjoy doing. And, in every show I work on, trying to find those moments of brevity, of cute, of fun. I love that stuff.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I've really answered your question clearly.
And
I will say though, I do I like a great collaborative relationship with clients.
mhm.
I think it really helps. And I don't think I've answered your question. So I don't know if there's like they date. I'm not a Quentin Tarantino.
Right.
You know his films from all that stuff.
Yeah.
For me, it's I guess clarity, funny, cute, and I also really really love as much as possible just set up just beautiful shots.
Right.
Like I love a lot of shows I've worked on at the end, at the end of production where your crew is rolling down and people are rolling off, and still need extra people to help, whether it's Photoshop or with finishing. I love that stuff. I love
Mm.
it. Dave's midnight working on Photoshop, adding some stuff to the
Right.
scene.
Right. Right.
I love that stuff.
Cool.
It's
Cool.
fun.
Nice. Um, it reminded me a little bit when you were talking about camera, because I think we met somewhere around Thomas the Tank many, many years ago. And I remember they had a visual style with Thomas where the camera's quite often locked and it would almost never move. And I do remember a director getting on the show who did some really dynamic camera stuff, and I think they, exited him off the show eventually because they were like, they wanted it back to what they were used to, the style, the template of, 70 or 80 years in production. Um, and there was another director I remember meeting on the show who had some interesting comments about. He said, "Imagine the camera never moves," and he said the main character is on a track. So he said it can't leave the track. He said the constraints on what we're doing here are very large, and he said the body of the main character is made of metal. So it doesn't flex, it doesn't move, it doesn't, and he said, so basically I have a face. That's what I'm working with. I have Thomas's round face. So he was feeling quite constrained, at the time as well, of just, I don't worry about the camera, but he said, like, every character is on a train track. They can't jump off and
Forward
run.
and back.
Yes, yes, right. And he said, the face comes in on this cylinder and talks to you, and then it leaves on the cylinder. He's like, ah. So I remember that being a quite a, his nemesis for a while, was working on the show. But
But that raises a good point, in that every show, I've often described it that whatever project I work on, uh, I have to relearn a bunch of things, because uh, certainly there's some similarities. Obviously, you're telling a story, you got characters, you got locations. If they're broad strokes, they're comedy, comedy, comedy. But the characters are different. The theme is different.
mm,
The client expectations are different.
mhm,
So in some ways, each one is its own animal.
right,
And so, how you board for this show, for example, might not work for this show.
right,
The timing of this. So there's certain things that you have to kind of, uh, let go or become flexible or malleable with. And for me, that's what part of what keeps it fun.
mm,
I love mixing it up. I've even if I get a project, and even if I think initially I'm not sure this is in my wheelhouse, I usually quickly find a way where I find my entry for me
mm,
into it.
mhm, mhm,
I directed the last season of Celebrity Deathmatch for MTV2, which I had heard about, of course, before that. It's adult, it's very violent, it's a bit snarky and stuff. And all I'd done at that point, a lot of what I'd done at that point was children's and preschool. So when that kind of slotted in for me to work on where I was working, my first thought was, I don't know, I don't know, this is my thing. Give it a shot. had so much fun on that show. And in fact, I get my one addition at the time to the Celebrity Deathmatch universe was I pitched the clients on what I called POV cameras,
Hmm.
or call point of victim,
What a
where
victim, right?
each of the fighters had like a little camera chest cam,
Sure.
so we could do shots with fists coming like right at the camera. It looked really cool, and they loved it. I had
Sure.
so much fun.
Yeah.
Let's go to a POV shot, or we had shots where the character was pummeled and lying on the canvas of the ring, and so you got this like sideways shot of the victor, jumping around.
Perfect.
So
Perfect.
it's fine. It's having enough flexibility in what you think you can and can't do,
Yeah.
and having fun with it. So I enjoy that as well. So
Good. Good. Excellent. Yeah, it was just some. I pulled up Celebrity Deathmatch on YouTube while you were talking, and it does look quite hilarious. It's these.
yeah, no, it's yeah. And again, I'll tell you that's the key thing about, there's directing your own work, which is its own thing. There's directing for clients,
Yeah.
and it's a different world. It really, I hate to use the adage, it's a village, but it is a village. And I think,
Right.
what's really great is when you have a relationship with your clients and your broadcaster where everyone just kind of gels and there's mutual respect and a true of sharing of ideas.
Mhm.
Those are the dream projects,
Right.
where everyone just kind of gets, it doesn't mean you always have to agree. You can have disagreements. You can still get notes and go, oh, come on, seriously?
Right.
But finding the common ground or the give and take, or, um, you know, what I also really appreciate is when if I get a note from clients and it's not that they're like, this is not working, do this, and this. What I prefer is, this is not working. Up to you to how you want to. This is what the
Right.
problem we have with it. What do you think we could do?
Right.
That's what I enjoy. I love syncing, going, kind of proverbially rolling the sleeves up
Yeah.
and going, they're not wrong. It's just not working for whatever reason. We got to figure out a solution that is creative and that is obviously production cost effective as well.
Yeah.
I enjoy doing that kind of problem solving stuff and coming back and going, okay, here's what I'm thinking. I always do the hands, the jazz hands.
Right.
Here's
Right.
what I'm
Right.
thinking. Um, but really, I've been fortunate to work on several shows where the people we're doing the show for, or our direct clients, have been absolutely fantastic. I'm friends with some of them to this day after like
Sure.
25 years. Where again, it was just mutual respect, and we were all trying to make a great show, and
Yeah.
coming at it from slightly different perspectives, and finding the thing that works
Yeah.
best for the project. So
Dave, were there any of those celebrity death matches that you remember? Like I see there's a Mariah Carey versus Jim Carrey match.
I don't think that's my season.
That's funny.
I was the last season.
Yeah.
I had one that was uh Tobey Maguire versus Jake Gyllenhaal, who was the better Spider-Man, and it was insane. I think one of them comes out of a crate at one point wearing Dr. Octopus's mechanical legs. And
Yeah. Oh, I found it. You want to
oh, did you
maybe?
really?
Yeah. Let's play a bit. I'm not sure if the sound will pick up, but let's.
Okay,
If you're up for it, let me do a
sure.
little screen share here. There we go. Can you see that?
Yep.
Not sure if the sound will pick up or not, but
And these two characters, Nick and Johnny, the hosts of the series, again, we had a lot of fun with them as well. Yeah, Jesus.
this is hilarious.
Yeah, that was I think we shot it. I think it was shot on twos, 24 FPS.
Yeah.
And the whole point, I mean, obviously the animation, we were going for quality, of course, but it was a little rougher. And that was the whole point. It's just rough, it's fun, it's rough and tumbly,
Yeah.
um, rubbery limbs,
Yeah.
but very strong posing. And it's very bloody. Like it's very we got some episodes where it gets extremely,
Right.
extreme bloody. We had I think there was one, even I was like, oh my goodness, I think we've gone too far. I think we had a spinal cord being ripped out at one point. It was, yeah. So, there's the
Oh,
crates there.
there we go. There's the
There we
Doc
go.
Ock arms.
There's the arms. And of course, the scripts were funny because it was all kinds of in jokes on the films and the personalities themselves, our audience shots. But we had multiple studios set up with animators working in tandem. And again, and again too, um, a director's team is vital as well. I don't even like using that phrase, a director's team. It sounds very possessive. I like the phrase that the team I worked with.
Yeah.
That's how I usually like to get in blood. And on this particular show, just a super great bunch of talented, skilled people who loved working on this show because it's all the crazy, over the top stuff that animators in particular like to do. And because it just pushed things so far, the laughter behind we'd hear animators finishing their scene and
Right.
then putting it on loop and calling everybody, come and check what I just did.
Right.
And lots of shared laughter, lots of digital blood too. So,
Yeah. Like,
but you contrast that with like some of the preschool work.
right.
So I've had the luxury of dabbling in a bunch of different styles and techniques and
Yeah.
content as well. Again,
Yeah.
it's fun. So I like it.
Absolutely. Good. Um, so question for you, stop motion, 2D, other media, is there a favorite medium or is it not really, it's more about the storytelling, is it?
It is, yeah. It's funny because a lot of my early career was stop motion predominantly, and I worked at a studio that was stop motion, known for its stop motion. But while I was there, another show I worked on, which was a lot of fun. It's actually the first full series I directed. It's called Crashbox for HBO Family, and super fun show. Stop motion, uh, real time puppets, cutouts, uh, 2D pixelated people as well. Total smorgasbord. Uh, Lots of fun. Um, and then as my career continued, I started getting into more 2D blend and then 2D as well. And like right now, I'm co-directing a 2D show. Um, yeah, it's really it's about the show. It's about the stories. It's about the characters.
Mhm.
I mean, if I was to sit down and animate something, I would probably still bend towards stop mo because that's kind of where I started. And
Right.
I really enjoy. Actually, at the start of the pandemic, um, I ended up doing 4 little stop motion COVID shorts back before we knew all the stuff we were dealing with, and it was like cough into your elbow and
Oh, I remember those. I remember.
those early things, what to do, what not to do.
Yes.
And I mean, I was working from home, so I hadn't animated stop motion for a while because I was directing all these 2D projects. So I set my little set. I set a setup over here,
Yeah.
and I remember thinking, it's been years since you've actually done stuff. I kind of wondered, like in Batman and Dark Knight Rises, have I still got it in me? And
You had to put the suit on.
I had to put the suit on, the leg brace, and the whole thing. And it was like 9 o'clock on a Sunday night. I'm like, what are you doing, man? And I just started. I didn't even know what it was going to be. I thought, well, I'll have him coughing as it. So I began to, and I found out I totally missed doing it. Like, oh my god,
Yeah.
that's so much
Yeah, for
fun.
sure. Yeah.
And I could still hack it. I could still
I, Dave,
like
Dave, I have in my mind while you're describing the story of actually doing a story about this. You know, the the director who hadn't animated in a long time, and then you'd have a and while this is going on, Batman's butler walks through, and it's actually Michael Caine, saying,
what uh,
Master Master Ward, I don't think you have it in you anymore. Like,
you're not
I
the
don't know.
same man you were 8 years ago,
That's
sir.
right. Yeah. Yes.
Well, it's true. But I ended up doing 4 of these little things, and on the third or fourth one, I was so into it. I literally I'm animating at 4:30 in the morning.
Wow.
And when I get in this zone, and I'm sure a lot
Yeah,
of creative people and
absolutely.
animation people get this,
Yep.
time just falls away.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
wasn't hungry. I wasn't thirsty. I was in the zone.
Yeah.
And it's so much fun. So as I'm relating this to you, I'm like, I gotta shoot something else again,
Yeah,
man.
yeah, yeah. But
Um,
it's trance-like almost. Like it's a I think it's a meditative state. Like
right.
I was a painter for years, and it
Yes.
was one of those things that would take me sometimes an hour or 2 hours to get into the subject, right? And then exactly what you said, the sun could come up or down, it didn't matter, and you would stop sometimes at 5 a.m. and go, well, I'm really proud of what I've done. I've got to go sleep half the day now, but you couldn't conjure the beast sometimes at 9:30 in the morning. Okay, I'm going to get creative now. I'm going to get, you know what I mean? And I think this is probably the challenge of a lot of other folks that don't understand the creative process, because it is like this mythical magical beast that you have to prepare everything for it to arrive. Sometimes, if like potentially, not always, but
No, it's true. I mean, I actually I've done some reading on I've done some reading on this. No, I've done some reading on this, yeah, on that nature of through different authors, their take on creativity.
yeah,
And I'm probably attributing to the wrong author, but I one of my favorite authors is Ray Bradbury,
yeah,
and he's written and spoken a lot about the nature of writing.
mm,
And his take on it was, and others have echoed this too. Uh, if you wait for the perfect moment to start X, you will never get anything done.
right,
And Bradbury's line, which I love, is, and he says this about writing specifically, but I think you could put this into any endeavor. He's like, if you want to write, just be aware you will start by writing garbage.
yes, yes,
Do not fear the garbage.
yeah,
He said, write your way through the garbage,
yeah,
and eventually you'll get to the good stuff at the other side.
yeah.
So I took that to heart years ago, and it's like, thank you, Ray. I
You
feel
see,
better about what I'm doing. Look,
you
it's
said
garbage, but it's
you
going to be
said
good one
I'm just going to direct some garbage for a while, and on the way.
day.
No, but it is I don't know, it's a thing that I've been aware of, most of my life, as I'm sure you have too, and again, when you get a team of people, right? Sometimes the best thing is to tell everyone to go out, go to a bar, just go shoot the shit, go talk, go, because they'll drop their guards and something cool will happen. And writers, it's the same. I've worked at newspapers and magazines when I was a kid for years, and the deal was get away from the office. The office is the least creative place you could be. You know what I mean? And if it's the studio, let everyone get out and go have some fun somewhere, or create an environment. I worked in an ad agency, and they always said, "How are we going to create fun today?" Because
Oh, that's nice.
in the middle of fun is where the good stuff will come out. And so there was a creative director that had kids' toys and a piano and musical instruments. And so if you hung out with her, the idea was, we're not going to talk about business. We're just going to play like kids, or
Right.
we're going to sing a song, or we're going to, and that's how she got into the zone. She said, I can't do it looking at a computer, and I can't do it in a boardroom. We need to create an environment where we've lost ourselves for a bit. We've lost our personalities, or the facade of whatever. Um, and she said, somebody better take some notes along the way, you know. But
It's true though. I mean, and I mentor at one of the colleges for animation, fourth year
yeah,
students, to help them get through their final films. And I also occasionally do, as not for a while, but I do like to do talks, like giving talks too.
yeah,
And the one thing I always advise is absorb, absorb. And I especially animation students, I'm like, don't just watch animation.
mm,
Don't limit what you're taking in. Watch great live action films. Watch the classics. Watch the schlocky ones.
yeah,
Go to the theater. Take walks, and
yeah,
just because it all goes in there.
yeah,
Even if you can't recall it consciously,
mm,
it kind of gets filed somewhere in
right,
there.
yeah,
And it's
yeah,
it's super important if you want to be rounded and well versed. It's like if you're a design, like my one of my daughters is works in interior design, and so I was sort of again with her, go out and absorb architecture from different eras and
Right.
places, and it feeds the
Yeah.
cauldron within, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think also of like I've seen a lot of drawing students on the subway. They've got a pad or a tablet, and they just sit there and draw gestures, and they draw quick sketches of people. Again, to study people, to
Yeah.
study posing and that sort of thing. And I always thought it was funny. Occasionally, you get on a subway train, and there's like 8 or 10 in a cluster, and they're all drawing. You know, it's kind of a, it's just strange. 'Cause if you're an introvert, it's not a good place to be.
You're just like cowering
So,
behind your. I guess no one's got newspapers anymore, so you're
right.
cowering behind your phone,
You've
which is
got
much
10 or 12 people staring at you, drawing you. Get away from me. Yeah.
smaller.
So, Dave, I want to pivot on that when you were talking about, mentoring and so on. Um, our industry has gone through crazy change in the last 20 odd years, right? And highs and lows. I think of, when all the software started to come out and it was these cool tools that were automating and speeding things up. But by the same token, there were some folks that, I'm a cell painter, I'm a hand drawn classical traditional animator. This is the way I do it. And a lot of that art form kind of died off, right? It's in places it got replaced by Harmony and Flash and these software programs that came out and kind of automated, and the rigs were more automated and so, but then I think by the same token, as that started to sort of permeate the market, we then saw colleges teaching these software programs.
Mm-hmm.
So it created jobs for other people to teach the software. It created whole faculty wings, I think, in some places, because now we had to teach these new tools,
Right.
right?
Right.
Um, and so, we're going through the same thing now where they're talking about, and I remember people that like traditional animators not picking up Maya or any of the new tools saying, I'm not gonna do this. I can't. And other
Yeah.
ones did. I know some guys that were like became directors or storyboard chiefs because they could still draw and then hand the drawings off to someone else who would automate them and so on, so on. Um, it's a couple guys in LA I know who just actually left the industry. They're like, nope, no, this is not what I signed up for. I've been doing this for 30 years. It was a good
I'm
run.
out. I'm
I'm
out.
I'm out. I'm gonna go build and repair classic cars. Like or astrophysics. I don't know. But there was a backup.
That's
There was a
right. That's
backup plan, right?
that's right.
I was thinking
Plan
of
B.
that's a good guitarist in Queen that's also a physicist. Yeah. But anyway, so sorry if it's a long question here, but I'm curious from your own perspective right now because we've been through the pandemic, which had an impact in places, and then this last year or so in animation and visual effects and gaming, everything slowed down, right? We're in a stalled or conservative economy. Yeah, we're in that sort of trough spot. So,
Yeah.
what would your advice be to people that you might meet that might ask you, like, what's going on, or a recent graduate coming out going, what the, I just finished school and this is what's going on?
Well, I mean, like all things, it's cyclical, or at least it's been cyclical to this point, and I can't see why it won't be cyclical
Right,
again. I mentioned like when I graduated, I just couldn't find live action work
right,
anywhere, and I was like, great, that's fantastic.
right.
And out of sheer desperation, I had to, start hitting the long shot for me,
Yeah,
but it worked. The animation houses.
yeah,
Um, I think the key thing is flexibility, is persistence, and leaving no stone unturned in your hunt for that what you want to do. Doesn't mean it's going to speed up the process, but I mean you can approach obstacles in your way two ways. You can rail and lament and curl up in a fetal ball. And honestly, there might be moments that happens, and that's okay too.
right, right.
But the key thing is that you don't spend that all that time there.
Mm.
You dig in and you figure out a way to make it work. I'm going to give you a very terrible example of this. Very terrible, terrible. It doesn't quite connect, but maybe it does. I don't know. When I was in college, I was shooting my film, my live action stop motion film, and I needed access. I was going to shoot the all the live action scenes in the college library, but I had to get permission. So I had to go to the college. I don't know what security. I don't know who it was office, and I had to ask for permission. And they would only grant me 1 hour,
Oh,
which was way not enough time to shoot what I. And I stood there going, 1 hour. That's it. Geez,
right,
yes, that's all I can give you. It was on a Saturday. I was gonna be shooting on a Saturday. So I
right.
left the office, and I remember quite distinctly leaning against the wall and just sliding down into a seated position, going, "Well, that's that. My film's toast. That's so
Right.
much for that. I guess I'm done." And I thought, you know what? I'm just gonna shoot. I'm
Right.
just gonna go and do it. I'm just gonna shoot.
Yeah.
Whatever happens, happens. I'm gonna. So I went, and then to make matters worse, I was in it. I was the lead character in the live action, and a friend of mine promised to be my cameraman. Saturday morning, he forgot to show up. I phoned him. He forgot to show. I had to phone my mother,
Oh,
and I trained my mother. I gave her a 10-minute workshop on the camera.
this
So
is
my
great.
mother came to the college, and she shot a good chunk of. I would set her up. I would focus. I would do the whole thing. All she had to do was hit start on the camera and stop. And I ended up staying at that look in that room in the library.
Yeah.
I think for like 6 hours. No one came
Wow.
me
Right.
out.
No. Okay.
I kept kind of doing this, but
Yeah.
nothing. And what I'm trying to say is that keep trying.
Yeah.
Just keep trying. And I know if again, the business is not great right now. If you're graduating, it might take you a while. You
Right.
might have to, like I did at one point, twice in my career life. I had to go back and work in retail for a little
Right.
while
Right.
because I had to.
Yeah.
Did I enjoy it? No.
Nope.
But it's you kind of do what you have to do sometimes. At the
Yeah.
same time, keep working on your own skills, broaden out your skills.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, uh, if you can't find work in uh animation studios, it's think sideways.
Yep.
Where can I find work doing something creative that's going to pay me something that's going to
Yeah.
build my career up, so that when things do uptick again,
Yep.
I'll have a better shot.
Yeah. No, that's great advice. I mean, yeah, I think we talked about it before at one point where similar when I graduated school, I was in a small town. We didn't have animation studios. We didn't have we had small ad agencies. A lot of them were focused on pharmaceutical or agricultural. I thought, oh boy, this is sexy. And so, but similar to what you were saying, I had 5 part-time jobs for about 3 years where I just hustled. I would look at someone's ads in a newspaper or magazine and I'd redraw them and do new copy and go in and go, hey, I just thought you could run an ad that looks like this. And they'd be like, what are you doing? And I said, well, I'm just doing this through the, and some of them would hire me. They'd be like, dude, can you make all our ads? And I'm like, yeah, sure. So, I'd go back and draw and then, but, that and photographing bands for another magazine because their photographer wasn't available. So I can shoot. I'll give me the camera. I'll go shoot, you know, but you had to kind of hustle. And then in the end, I had 7 or 8 freelance clients and a couple of part-time jobs. And eventually someone said, hey, can you work like Tuesday to Friday for us? I'm like, can I?
Almost full time. We'll give you almost full time,
Right.
kid.
And then, about 3 months in, they're like, yeah, this Monday thing's not working. Could you start coming in on Monday? I'm like, yep. You know, but
You're
it,
like,
it
let me check my count. Sure, I
yeah,
can squeeze you in.
yeah. I had to quit a part-time job on the weekend to do it, but I got my full-time job finally. But yeah, it's that thing of if you are a creative person, you could work at an ad agency, a design firm. There's so many different places, graphic design, and again, the animation industry, as you know, as we all know, it's right now it's in that kind of it's a conservative, let's say, or a
Yeah,
challenging year for sure,
yeah.
and hopefully it starts to pick up again soon.
Well,
Um,
your story about the 5 jobs.
yeah,
I was working at a studio, and this is years ago. And one of the local television networks used to run these little animated bumpers for their children's block of shows.
yeah,
And I thought a lot of them were not that good. I thought, oh, that's. And some of them were stop motion. This is back when I was mostly stop motion.
Yeah.
Oh man, I could do better than this.
Yeah.
So I cold called the network
Yeah.
to talk to their on air promotions,
Yeah.
and I phoned again, and then I phoned again, and I was it's two of my things I tell the students: polite persistence.
Yes.
Always be
Yes.
polite, but
Yeah.
be persistent. And so I think they got sick of hearing from me. And so one of their people responsible for on air promotions met with me, and they had put together a very small budget. And he's like, "Would you still be interested in doing?" Yes, yes, I
Yes.
would.
Absolutely.
Yes, I
Yeah.
would. And so
Yeah.
I did some. So I got my own gig doing some bumpers in my parents' basement.
Right.
I mean, it didn't pay extraordinarily well,
Yeah.
but I wanted the exposure and the
Yeah.
experience, and all that stuff. And
Yeah.
yeah, persistence, again, and I think I borrowed this from Bruce Lee. I think it's Bruce Lee. I I always tell people be kind of like water.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you go around, you go over, you go under. When things get hot, water turns to steam, escapes, reforms as water, and keeps on going. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that is such a key. I think persistence, your own personality, your ability to work with people, even if you're not top level skills or top level creative, even if you had to honestly judge yourself and you're here,
Yeah.
having those other attributes of never giving in,
Right.
being energetic, being enthusiastic, a
Yeah.
good team person,
Yeah.
that'll get you through and by. And
Yeah.
then you get the opportunities to level up on the skill thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess it's funny when you say that because it reminded me. I remember being on a VFX show years ago, and there was a fellow who had I don't know what you want to the right term, but very eclectic kind of bohemian personality. He was if anyone engaged him in a conversation, you'd kind of see people going, "Whoa," and in the early days, I remember the VFX soup coming down, and then the executive producer walked by my office once and said, I don't know if that guy's going to make it to the end of the show. He's kind of odd. He's a little weird. He's like, but these start to pile up like cordwood outside my office. These comments right now, like, uh-oh, we might have to let him go off the show. And cut to like a couple months in, the same people started to say, you know what? He's wacky as whatever, but he's our wacky. He's like a mascot now on the show. He says the most outrageous things now, and everyone laughs. So he's not overly productive, but don't let him go because we need this guy for morale right now. Like they're like, he's our guy, right? He's our
That's funny.
so, he was almost like affectionately their mascot on the show. They were like, yeah, he's nutty as all get out, but boy, oh boy, like he could really bring a house down. Like, so, it's funny. You couldn't suffer five of those people, but the
No,
one out of, a team of 80 people, they're like, this guy's pretty bizarre, but we like that a little bit.
he's
And
he's keeping us sane.
yeah, yeah, yeah. The
It's
rest of
like
us look very sane next to him. Yeah, yeah. I mean, the other thing reminded me of, this thing about being only allowed to be in the spot for an hour. Um, One of the courses I took in school, I was in fine art. Every once in a blue moon, like it was like very political, there was an anatomy for artists class, and they would handpick about six of the fine art students. We had to apply and go through this procedure, and they would throw us in with pre-med people
wow.
in a gross a biology class where we're in a morgue for months drawing cadavers.
I'm
And
not
and
I'm not sure I could do that one, but go
well,
ahead.
for me, growing up as a kid, Leonardo da Vinci, they bought bodies. It was illegal, but this is how they understood anatomy was to find a
Right,
cadaver. And
right.
so, the great Renaissance painters learned to paint bodies because they'd actually purchased them illegally and so in my mind at that time I thought this is fascinating. I'm going to actually be able to get in with these doctors to be one day.
Right.
And so it was like the island of Dr. Moreau. It was the most frightening. We had this massive classroom with like cold stainless steel tables with about 60 bodies on them, and they're
Wow.
all covered in black, like 6 mil polytarp, like a garbage bag material. And There were 4 students assigned to each body, and there were like all these rules and everything, other regulations. You have to do this, you have to do this, you have to do that. Um, and we had curfews, and that's what reminded me from what you're saying about, you can only be here for an hour. We all
Right.
had keys. We had a pass key to get into the morgue, but no one was allowed to be there past 11 p.m. That was the rule. So if you want to draw, come in at 6, 7, 8, because some of the drawings would take hours,
For sure.
and
For
and
sure.
we'd have like 20 gauges of pencils and charcoal, and you were doing all these anatomically correct, as photoreal as we could make them, right?
Right.
Sometimes we get loose, but there was a couple guys that were doing this photoreal thing, and we all got sucked into the vortex. We're like, oh, now I got to spend 10 hours on this 2-hour drawing because that guy set the
Right.
bar, right?
Oh my gosh, man, I gotta keep pace here.
But going to what we were talking to earlier, I got in the zone one day, and I'm drawing this part of this body, and I am drawing and drawing, and the sun has gone down. 11 o'clock is several hours past. I'm in the morgue like at 3 in the morning. I'm surrounded by
The
cadavers on
dead.
tables, and on top of that, in this, it was a training morgue, so we had like effectively like glass cases full of some sort of preservative, and there were different body parts all in different parts of prosection where they'd peeled off muscle tissue, skin, etc. So it is the creepiest place on planet Earth. Like you couldn't design a scarier Halloween house than,
I'm getting tingles just listening
right?
to it. So
Nobody's coming in for candy if this is Halloween,
no,
right?
no.
So I've got a tiny little work light on this cadaver, and I'm in there drawing, and I've lost all sense of time and place because I'm in the zone. And I away across this huge room, and it's massive, like it's like a couple 100 feet in any direction. You're in a cavern. The night cleaner came in with a mop and was mopping. And I guess at 2 or 3 in the morning, nothing ever moves in that room.
Right. Should apparently
Right.
not.
But
Yes.
if he turns on any of the lights, it is like the scariest place on planet Earth, right? It is like it's the Marty Feldman in Frank, Abby Normal
Oh, young
Brain.
Frankenstein,
You've
right.
got you've got literally you've got shelves full of brains as an example, and another one full of eyeballs, and like it is just horrifying, right? Anyways, I happened to go, and all I heard was the mop drop, and the door. The guy was gone. Like, pew. If it was an animated, you would see the puff of smoke and
And
some
the,
glow,
and the outline of him, right?
right?
Yes.
Yeah. So then at that point, I realized, oh my God, it's like 3 a.m. I better get out of here, But that guy was like, pew,
Wow.
probably still got nightmares. Uh,
He still speaks of it.
yes, that's
And
right.
then in the middle, it coughed.
Something in that room
and
of
and thus started my used car salesman career.
right. Yeah, yeah. It was wild. It was crazy. But hey, I want to pivot to one more question. Are there any shows you've worked on that have been near and dear to your heart? I'm sure there's several, but in your career, are there things where you're like, this is really cool, or the team's really cool, or some part where and correct me if I'm wrong, but there might be several.
Well, first of all, one thing I'll say is that I have been really fortunate in that almost without exception, the people I've worked with have been great. I've worked with a lot of really fantastic, skilled, dedicated people. Uh, Pretty much every show I've worked on, I've been really, and a lot of them are, friends and acquaintances to this day, even after years and years and years, and we can call each other up or, on the social medias. Hey, how's it going? But I just actually had a text with somebody he was actually technically a client on a show I was on. He was a client producer from one of the networks. But we shared a love of this movie. It's a cheesy 1972 movie called Horror Express
Mm,
with Peter Cushing, and we bonded over that years ago. So we were just texting about that 2 days ago.
yeah.
So that's been for me, luckily, a common thread all through. I've maintained really solid friendships with a lot of teams and clients too. Shows, uh, yeah, I've been lucky. There's been a few I've really like. One of the first shows, I think it was the first series I directed, was called Crashbox for HBO Family, and again, fantastic clients. Uh, it was a mixed blend. Honestly, the show still this we did this in 98, 99. HBO Family still shows it to this day.
Wow. Wow.
25 years later. And
Wow.
it's a smorgasbord. It's like a game show. So it's a smorgasbord of like language games, math games, science games, comic historical facts, and it was stop motion, cutout, pixelated live action, 2D, shadow puppets. It was a little bit of everything,
Mm.
and I loved it. I loved every minute of it. We did uh 26 half hours in 9.5 months, which bought again, I credit the producer I worked with. She worked miracles to shepherd all that and organize it all, keeping all of us, crazy, goofy animators and directors in line and on point. I guess I was the creative director of the show, and I also animated on a few segments directly. I actually still have a couple props from that show here. Another show was The Adventures of Napkin Man for
Mm.
CBC. Again, great relationship with the creator of the show, the clients, the network, my producer, who I just met on that show. We've become friends. Great team. Some of the animators were fresh out of school, but and again, tying back with what I said earlier, a couple of them, their skills from their reels were they were good. They weren't like, you know, but they were good. But what we liked about them was getting to know them during the interview
Mm.
process and the things they said and the enthusiasm they brought to it. And every one of them leveled up through the course of that production and other
Right.
shows beyond that. And one thing I liked about that show, the Napkin Man show, again, with my mixed media kind of background, is it was 2D in the style of Schoolhouse Rock from the 70s.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it was 2D characters set in the real world with photographic plates because it was a live action 2D show. So we were on set again, appealing to my live action, loves. I'm on set, cameras. I wasn't directing the live action, I was the animation director. So I was there on set to make sure that when they were shooting the plates that we were getting exactly what we needed. And it was just so much. Plus, I love, again, this is going back to what you asked earlier on. Uh, it's again, and I know it's kind of directing 101, but story, characters, and design. And this show for me had all three. Plus, I totally 1,000% believed in what the show was about.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
when you work on shows, I know the same with you. You don't always fully. It's not your thing. It's not fully the thing you would watch, or it might not be fully the thing that gets you super excited. But you work on it. You do the best you can. You try to bring to. You find things that you like about it. This was a project I just loved from day one.
Mm-hmm.
It just spoke to me. I liked the humor in it. The writing was funny. Doing shots like this title sequence, so much fun. Those two masks, the masks that you see there, were not the masks. Three of them, I think three of them were not the masks that we shot on set. We decided afterwards that we needed to change them. So I actually redid those masks here at home, shot them with a high res, and then we comped them straight on top. I matched the lighting again, bringing in my live action and stop motion skills to
Yeah.
match that. And then when we finished the shooting, because we had tight live action shooting schedule, shooting all these background plates, I would take home tons of the toys, the props, like these blocks and whatever, just in case as we produced the animation, if we needed an effort angle BG,
Mm-hmm.
and so I had to in a few episodes cobble together some insert background plates, just shooting it here at home and then keying it in After Effects afterwards. And I love all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I love the magic of bringing, like, this is just cool. I mean, I love it. It's just so cute and drop shadow, and it's 2D, it's 3D, it's like I mean live action 3D, whatever. I love it. It was just a fun project all the way through.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um,
Absolutely.
and then another show was fun. Was a show called Fangbone, and again, Fangbone is kind of a 10 to 12 action comedy, which at the time I really hadn't done
Right.
because most of my stuff had been a bit cuter, sweeter, or more. I hadn't really done anything in this particular zone yet. So I went in thinking, well, I'll give this a shot. I had so much fun with this show because it's just barbarians, wizards, monsters, a snarky villain, and magic. And I mean, how can you kind of go wrong with that?
Right.
It was fast paced. The showrunners wanted, like, it was 11-minute stories, and I think one episode in particular, in 11 minutes, we had 403 shots
Wow.
because we had like 9 frame long scenes for the action fighting shots. It was, and the pacing was just, again, I mentioned earlier about every project being its own thing. Coming from preschool, the pacing is the pacing. Hey, let's go down to the ice cream store and we'll get some ice cream. That's a great idea. Let's go. Da, 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 da. Fang bone, it's like ice cream, go, boom, and they're
Right.
there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was kinetic and exciting,
Yeah.
and it kind of got me to loosen up and have some fun with snappy punch, kick, fight, monster scream.
Yeah. Yeah.
Lots of fun. Lots of
I
fun.
can't even imagine a quote on something like that. If it'd be like,
It was tight. It was
yeah,
tight, and we had to find ways to just get through it in the time that we had, and
yeah,
um, again, great animation team to work with. Despite having to cram in all these shots, and again, I think 403 was most of the episodes. I think, if memory serves, were around 250, 260, which is still a little high.
yeah,
If again, coming from preschool where it's 100 scenes less per on average, right? So
yeah,
again, you kind of felt like you're at Mach 10 working
yeah,
on the show because it
yeah,
was so fast paced.
yeah.
Uh, but that was a fun show too, and we all got it. I actually have somewhere around here at the Christmas party that year we did a exchange of gifts, and I got a crocheted fang bone helmet with the
Right.
horns, which I still have here somewhere.
Excellent.
So much
Excellent.
fun.
Well, Dave, I'm just, I think we could talk all night, but I want to be mindful of the time. So I really wanted to thank you. We could always do another one later. I'm just curious, 2024 is upon us. Are there projects ahead? Are you looking specifically to jump on something? I know you're on a show now,
Yeah,
um,
yeah, we're
but
we're we're in season 2 on the show I'm on right now, and
I see.
it's called Alma's Way for PBS and Fred Rogers.
Great.
Again, another great situation of fantastic clients to work with, very collaborative, um, very open to ideas. We get along very well when a lot of our weekly calls were just kind of like laughing, which is it's a great place to be when you're working on a show together with somebody.
Yeah.
And I believe in what the show stands for. It's got a good um, theme and reasons behind it. And so we're in season 2, and still have several months ahead on it,
Hmm.
and we're just awaiting on a potential season 3. So, which until you don't know, but
Sure.
I wouldn't be surprised. So
Yeah.
that's kind of where things are at for me. Although now that we've talked a bit about stop mo, it's like maybe I'll set the camera and shoot. And then I'm still mentoring at the college, which again,
Right.
I I really get excited doing that. I like to really I like trying to motivate and help inspire people.
Yeah.
I like to try to share again my experiences that again the whole persistence thing and
Yeah.
all that. It's so important, and the great thing about it is that working with students, uh, you kind of come away galvanized as well because they have so many great ideas, inventive storylines. So it's kind of it's sharing on both sides, which I think is
Yeah.
super important, you know. So
Yeah, absolutely. And thinking back to your stop mo comment there, will we see a potential ZZ Top action sequence with you starring in the role or anything with your beard and your hair?
oh, I don't know about that. Actually, I've been warned by my one of my daughters that there's a hair trim in my near
Right,
future. So,
right, right. Yeah,
that might happen, but
yeah. Sleep,
yeah, no,
sleep, sleep with one eye open, Dave.
yes, I'll do my best on that
Right.
score.
All right. Well, look, again, thank you again for joining us. I really appreciate the time and lovely to hear the stories and chat with you. So hopefully we'll do it again at some point. All right.
Anytime, and hopefully by then I won't be living on Mars anymore.
Yeah,
Although
yeah.
this is not really Mars, this is the Bay of Fundy at low tide.
They have
But
funny, but and there's also a random like rogue yellow pillow on the beach.
oh
So
yes,
yeah,
that's
pops up
my
occasionally.
comfy pillow.
All right, Dave. Thanks again.
All
Talk
right,
to you
take it
soon.
easy, man. See ya.
Yeah.
Bye.